All right, you tuned into a preview of Auburn traveling to Nashville to take on the number 16 Vanderbilt Commodores. Vanderbilt, once again, 7 wins on the season for the second year in a row, looking to get their 8th win of the season and get closer to their first 10-win season in program history here with a couple games left in the season. For Auburn, a lot of changes most recently happening here. We saw the firing of Hugh Freeze. It was announced today on Wednesday, November 5th, that Ashton Daniels will be starting at quarterback. So once again, riding out there with the backup quarterback, the Stanford transfer. A lot to break down from this game, and I want to give you some quick things to look for in this matchup. Right now, Vanderbilt opens up at 6.5-point favorites, and the over-under is 45.5. So let's get right to it. You know, for Vanderbilt, with a team that has a lot still on the line, number 16 in the college football playoff, there's still an opportunity if you win out and things happen above you for teams such as Texas, who are playing A&M, Oregon, who's playing Iowa this weekend, and other teams in the SEC, Oklahoma playing Alabama in a couple weeks. You have to win games like this if you want to make the playoffs and you want to get to the spot you want to get to as a program. And then for Auburn, you know, you're looking for your second SEC win on the season. You're 1-5 right now in the SEC. You're sitting at 14th overall in the SEC. But there's still a lot of things they do right, and they've given a lot of teams some tough games in this conference. And so, you know, when we look at what Auburn does right, they're number 3 in the SEC in rushing defense, and that pairs pretty well with what Vanderbilt does, right? Right now, Vanderbilt is 6th in the SEC, or 5th in the SEC when it comes to rushing offense. Last week, we saw Diego Pavia be the leading rusher for Vanderbilt, and Texas held them to 58 rushing yards total. He had a rushing TD, but if Auburn can mirror what Texas did stopping the run, that's going to give them a better chance to win this game. Auburn's issue last week, and it's very obvious, it was their lack of offense. They scored 3 points in the game. Kentucky got their first SEC win of the season, and it was, you know, really the nail in the coffin for Hugh Freeze. It's a really, really tough story for Auburn's offense this season. They're 15th in the SEC in total yards per game offensively, 329 yards per game. They're 16th in the SEC in passing yards per game, 164.8 yards per game. There's a reason why we're seeing a lot of memes with Cam Coleman being, you know, rumored to be transferring out. We obviously saw Damari Alston most recently put his name in the portal after opting to redshirt for this season. But, you know, Auburn, they still have Jeremiah Cobb. They're still 8th in the SEC right now when it comes to rushing yards per game, 164. Jeremiah Cobb on this season, 700-plus rushing yards. That's where they have a shot to do something against this Vanderbilt defense. I would establish the run. Vanderbilt's defense is, again, not a slouch when it comes to rushing defense either, but that has been the strong suit for Vanderbilt. Strong suit for Auburn. A little bit about Ashton Daniels and what he's going to have to do in this game. Did some research on how he played last season. This season, and most particularly last game, he had a couple interceptions. He didn't play too well. I think he went 21 for 30-something last game against Kentucky. We're going to need to see a performance from him similar to how he played last year against Louisville. At Stanford, although their season wasn't great, they had 6 straight losses. He had some good performances against Syracuse, some good performances against Louisville. Both teams at one point made their way into the rankings. They beat a ranked Louisville at Stanford. What he's going to have to do is settle in, take advantage of his weapons that he has with Eric Singleton, take advantage of using Cam Coleman, even use his legs. He had 3 rushing touchdowns last season. He might not be as fast as Jackson Arnold, but it is a component of his game that he can use to trip up this Vanderbilt team. What Vanderbilt and Auburn both do really well is creating pressure. You know, right now, particularly for Vanderbilt, they have Miles Capers, their defensive end and D tackle. He's 10th in the SEC when it comes to sacks in the season, 4.5. Both of these teams defensively create pressure. Auburn right now has 23 sacks in the season, and Vanderbilt has 21 sacks on the season. These stats are important because where Auburn has struggled most of this season is keeping their quarterback upright. And if Vanderbilt can create pressure, it's a reason. It'll be one of the main reasons why they find themselves going into the 8-win territory, getting their 8th win of the season. And then for Auburn, you have a lot to look at positively on defense. We talked about what they've been able to do in certain games. They played a close game with A&M. They played a close game with Georgia. Close but no cigar. But there is a lot to look forward to there. I would really try to limit Pavia's ability on the ground, but he can still do a lot in the air. He's 6th in the SEC when it comes to passing yards in the season. Right now, Vanderbilt in general is 9th in the SEC in passing yards per game. Pavia is having a great season. He's got over 2,000 plus passing yards. He had 300 plus passing yards last game. It came a lot towards the end of the game when they were driving on Texas and had an opportunity to potentially tie the game with a recovered onside kick. Make Pavia one-dimensional. It's what they were sort of able to do when they played A&M. It was what they were sort of able to do when they played Auburn. Right now for Vanderbilt, the pressure is more on them. We see Auburn is not playing with their coach. This is the 4th team in the SEC this season that's going to be going into a game without their initial head coach they started the season with. Is it going to be enough on what Auburn has to win this game? I think it's possible. They're playing on the road, makes it a little bit tougher. But I'm not going to sit here and say that Vanderbilt has the toughest road environment, and that's never really been the strong suit. I know it's a record season. For Vanderbilt, I think with everything they've built this season, what's still on the line, looking to get their next win here with Auburn. You got Tennessee at the end of the season. You're playing for a bowl game. You're playing for the playoffs potentially. You can't let this type of game trip you up after a very emotional loss last week in Austin. I was in Austin last weekend. I watched the game there live, and I admire Vanderbilt's heart to fight in that game despite being down 24-10, despite giving up a touchdown on the first offensive play, the turnover that happened on the first offensive drive with Pavia fumbling the football. If they can possess the football in this game, if they can really stop what has proven to be a struggling offense and create pressure, this should be a pretty easy win for them. If it's a dogfight, it's an opportunity for Auburn to have some heroics from Ashton Daniels, an opportunity for them to use Jeremiah Cobb and come away with the win here on the road. We saw Auburn play spoiler last year against an overmatched opponent in Texas A&M, so they're not susceptible to upsetting teams. In this matchup, 6.5 point favorite, 45.5 point over under. I like Vanderbilt. I'm going to say 17-10. I think it's pretty close. I trust Auburn's defense. I think Vanderbilt finds a way to win this game 17-10. But I want to know what y'all think. Both these teams playing for different reasons at this point in the season, and it's obviously been a historic season for Vanderbilt, and there's a lot for Auburn that they can prove in a win against a top-ranked opponent to this point in playing Vanderbilt. So, as always, I'm Randall Jr. It's a new SEC podcast, and thank you once again.